Est-ce que la traduction est prête? Okay. Bonjour donc, mesdames et messieurs de la presse. L'Union africaine accueille ce matin le ministre
media representatives.
Sergey Lavrov, ministre des Affaires
Today
étrangères.
we have received His Excellency, the Foreign Minister of the Russian
Nous sommes
Federation,
honorés
Sergey
de
Lavrov.
cette visite de travail. Elle
For
intervient
us,
aussi à
it
quelques
is an
mois
honor
avant le prochain
to
sommet Afrique-Russie.
have had this working meeting. It's taking place a few months before the next Russia-Africa summit that is going to take place for the third time. The first one was held in Sochi in 2019. Then there was a summit in 2023 in St. Petersburg. In 2019, under our partnership program, we have consolidated the foundation that we now use to work with our Russian friends to consolidate our cooperation. This morning we discussed matters of economic and trade cooperation. We discussed investments between Russia and Africa. And also we talked about the ways to enhance the efficiency of trade and economic relations between Russia and Africa. We discussed the trade between Russia and Africa. The trade is quite low. It's $27 billion. And the next few years, we need to double these indicators. As for the investment, that was one of the most important parts of our discussions, because that's something that is both Russia and Africa are interested in. We also discussed energy, healthcare, agriculture, fertilizers supply, and many other things. We also discussed matters of security. Russia is a permanent member of the UN Security Council. The African Union appreciates the contribution of Russia into resolution of the African matters within the UN, and African Union also thanked the Russian Federation for its support to the resolution that was made in December 2025 that allows the Commission be funded from the fees paid by the member states. The African Union also appreciates the position of the Russian Federation in terms of the reformation of the UN Security Council, and we appreciate Russia's support for the 2 permanent seats at the Security Council and 5 non-permanent seats for Africa at the UN Security Council. We also discussed matters related to the international geopolitical situation. In particular, we talked about the war in Ukraine and the war between Iran on the one side and Israel and the United States on the other side.
I also underscored that the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz has disrupted the supply chain for fuel.
Also, I would like to emphasize that blockade of the Strait of Hormuz stops the supply of fertilizers to our entire continent, and it also served as the reason for inflation, and it exacerbated the vulnerability of some of the countries of the African Union. And we also exchanged views on the matters of healthcare and the recent outbreak of the Ebola diagnosis equipment, and we appreciate the PCR tests and the equipment that was supplied by the Russian Federation and its other support. And also, if we can get the strains, the biological material of the strains, then maybe we can facilitate the effort to develop the vaccine. And we also discussed counterterrorism efforts in the Sahara-Sahel region, and we discussed how we can strengthen our cooperation in this field. This cooperation between Russia and Africa will continue to develop, will continue to grow in the future, and also we believe that we need to focus on investment.
We will be preparing the 3rd edition of the Russia summit in October, and we will put in place teams to guarantee the success of this summit, which is a very important event that the African Union Commission will certainly work very hard to make it successful. Once again, Your Excellency, I welcome you to the African Union headquarters, and thank you for your visit. Back to you.
Уважаемые представители средств массовой информации, сегодня здесь, в штаб-квартире
Media representative, today here at the African Union headquarters, we held a substantive meeting, very interesting talks with my longtime friend, with the chairperson of the African Union Commission, His Excellency Mr. Mahmoud Youssouf, and I'm grateful to him for traditional hospitality and for organizing this meeting. The meeting was held at the trust-based friendly atmosphere, and we discussed the current state of affairs and prospects of the relations between our country, the Russian Federation, and the African Union and its member states, including our cooperation in terms of regional and international dossiers. We agreed to make the consultations an annual thing, because that's the architecture of cooperation between Russia and the African Union that we are developing now, or rather, the architecture exists, but we need to improve it. We need to add departmental dialogues in all the areas of our cooperation, of our humanitarian cooperation as well, and that's what we are going to look into. We are both interested in expanding our multidimensional cooperation, the cooperation between Russia and the African Union. As I've mentioned, we are both interested in developing cooperation in security, in trade, in education, in industry, and healthcare, something that His Excellency mentioned as well in his remarks. Also, humanitarian, cultural, sport context, and it is in this context that we discussed the possible launch of the departmental dialogues with the participation of various agencies and departments and organizations from both Russia and the African Union. As for the international part of our views, we share the concern of the African Union in conflict in the Great Lakes area, in African Horn, in Sudan, in South Sudan, in Libya, and we will continue to provide assistance to our African friends to help them settle these difficult situations in accordance with the principle African solutions to African problems, and the rest of the international community, those who sincerely want to help Africans to resolve their numerous crises. Mostly, these are legacy of colonial era. They must help Africans to implement this principle, to implement African solutions to African problems. We discussed the significance of the UN Security Council's resolution that stipulates the principle of support, including financial support for the peacemaking efforts by the African Union in Somalia. And that's one example where that should not become an isolated case. And we have briefed our friends about our plans to travel tomorrow to Niger, to Niamey, where we are going to have a second full-fledged ministerial meeting between Russia and the Sahel States Alliance, Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso. These are member states, and we will also take into consideration the outcomes of today's talks to promote the constructive agenda during the next day's talks, and we are going to develop closer contacts between the Sahel Alliance and the African Union as well. We have agreed to strengthen coordination within the UN Security Council, where African Troika, trio of non-permanent members also present, and our firm stance that the African representation at the UN Security Council must be enhanced. under the principle of Zovini and third declaration, because that would fix the historical injustice towards the African continent in the context of the reformation of the UN Security Council, and it must be implemented by providing additional seats to Africans, to the Latin American countries, to the Caribbean countries, and to the Asian countries of the global south. No additional seats for our Western colleagues are needed because with things as they are overrepresented as it is. This year, the African Union extended for 10 more years the justice for Africans via the reparation payments. We support this initiative of our African friends, of our numerous African friends, in their effort to attain national sovereignty in various fields, first of all in finance, in developing technology, in energy. We stand for eradication of the neo-colonial practices of today, and we see it as an important step towards the creation of a fair world order that is based on multipolarity. And it is not by accident that last December, General Assembly adopted a resolution in accordance with which December 14th is going to be marked as a day of the struggle against colonialism. It serves as a good foundation to not only to start some general discussions, but also to start some practical effort to overcome the remnants of the exploitation of the African countries, because they have rich mineral resources, but they receive a minimum of the added value that the West is getting from their mineral resources. We are satisfied with the outcomes of the talks, and I would like to mention that we exchanged views on the situation in the Strait of Hormuz, in the Persian Gulf. In general, we discussed the situation in the Palestinian territories, where some concerning trends are accumulated because the two-state concept is being buried. They do not want to allow to establish the Palestinian state in violation of the UN resolution. As for the Strait of Hormuz, there are talks in this regards. We welcome these talks, and we hope that these negotiations will help bring the situation with safe navigation, with the freedom of navigation via the Strait of Hormuz back to status quo, back to the state in which it was before the U.S. and Israel launched an aggression against the Islamic Republic of Iran. And in conclusion, I would like to once again express my gratitude to our African counterparts, to His Excellency personally, for their balanced position in regards of the Ukrainian crisis in and around Ukraine, in the UN organization, the representatives of the African countries, of the African Union, of the African Union Commission. They show understanding for what is happening there, and they show readiness to try to understand the gist of this conflict and not to see everything solely by the prism of the Western propaganda. So we are happy with the talks. We will continue to maintain constructive dialogue, and we look forward to seeing His Excellency in Moscow late October to attend the third Russia-Africa Summit. And next year, I hope, we will hold consultations in Moscow, the ones that we held today here, and we will be happy to see you there as well. Thank you.
Здравствуйте, уважаемый Сергей Викторович. На фоне освобождения Константиновки
Good afternoon, Minister Lavrov. Against the backdrop of Constantinov collaboration in the Western media, they are trying to present the successes, the accomplishment of the Russian army as some fake news, and considering that African partners, they are also reading this Western news, so maybe you raise this topic of some joint mechanism of the verification of data or any attempts to work against these fake news to stop African countries fall victim to these fake Western narratives. Well, we discussed the situation in Ukraine, not in such detail as for your question. On the status of Konstantinovka, I think the best response is the invitation that was extended by our military to the Ukrainian side to come to Konstantinovka and to retrieve the bodies of the fallen Ukrainian troops. Ukraine refused to do that, and so that underscores, and many commented in the same vein, that Ukraine does not need neither alive, their troops neither alive nor dead, so they will probably write them off as missing in action. But some 20 news agencies, when they learned that there was such an invitation, was extended, they expressed their will to travel there to witness the ceremony, and then they would have witnessed to whom Konstantinovka belongs currently, but the Ukrainian authorities denied them this possibility. And this statement that things are not as Russia described them, that's nothing new. It started long before the special military operation, when the West started using lies, started preparing for the war against the Russian Federation to try to inflict, to deal with the strategic defeat once again. This time they decided to act, to prepare for this aggression with the hands of the Ukrainian regime that they brought to power, and all the talks with which ultimately ended with the fact that neither the Kiev regime nor their handlers in the West, so they proved once again, time and time again, that it's impossible to negotiate with them. As for the mechanisms to help verify the data, there is an association, I believe we are going to mark its second anniversary soon, an international association on the data verification, on the fact-checking. I think some 50 organizations are represented there by their news agencies, and it carries out journalist investigations, and there are a lot of matters, a lot of questions for the accusations hurled at us that we've been hearing for the last 20 years. So, for example, remember 2007, this poisoning of Litvinenko in London's hospital, and they believe that the information pertaining to this investigation must be closed because allegedly he was poisoned by the Russian special services. Then in 2018, the Skripal's case, and Russia was again accused in poisoning them. The Skripals are alive, but they are hidden somewhere, and no one is responding to our official requests to help us establish contact with the Russian Federation citizens. His daughter also disappeared, and she is also Russian national. And I can go on and on. Alexei Navalny in 2020, when he was taken immediately, the permission was granted to move him from Omsk to the Bundeswehr hospital. All the details, all the formalities were skipped, were fast-tracked, and that was abused by those who traveled with Navalny to the German hospital. We have not received any test results, and they used these test results to declare that he was poisoned with this Novichok nerve agent. When we requested a chance to look at these test results, we were told, no, we are going to send it to the Organization on Banning the Chemical Weapons. So we approached them, and there we were told the Germans prohibited us from sharing it with you. Then there was Bucha in April 2022, when 3 days after the Russian troops were withdrawn from this Kiev suburb, and when there was mayor speaking in all the interviews saying that Bucha is free again, and then 3 days later BBC filming crew traveled there and they filmed dozens of dead bodies that were accurately placed along the main road with hands tied and a lot of things that, well, looked odd considering the situation in that town. Of course, we were accused right away of this massacre, and then they introduced yet another package of sanctions because of that, and we still have not received an answer to a simple question. Please, publish the names of those people the BBC showed during their trip to Bucha. I approached the UN Secretary General. He's not saying anything. We are not getting any answer to our official request to the High Commissioner on Human Rights. Unofficially, they are saying, well, you know, it is impossible because the relatives could be targeted. But why does it have to do anything with the relatives? Because any disaster, for example, a shell hit a school, and all the relatives, they want justice, they want to find the guilty party, they want to punish those who were guilty of this. And here we do not get anything from the relatives. The BBC never mentioned any relatives, did not mention any names. And I think some kind of journalist investigation should be launched as well. I tried to provoke such an investigation when, during a press conference in New York, well, I believe for the 3 last times, for the 3 General Assemblies, when I held a press conference, so we talk to the journalists, to the UN journalists. I know most of them, so some 50 journalists attend these press conferences, and every time I tell them, my friends, sometimes you start your investigations on because of a minor events, of minor things. So now a lot of money were spent to investigate the crews on the Russian tankers or foreign tankers that is moving Russian oil. I believe in Denmark they published something like this. So they did good, they did well, they learned a lot. But don't you want to learn the names, whose names were used to stage this huge provocation that was one of the reasons that undermined the signing, stopped the signing of the peace deal that was drafted by negotiators from the both sides. So I always try to address these international journalists at the UN, because Bucha was big buzzword at the UN, that in Russia, in Bucha, massacred dozens of civilians. Well, okay, you are professionals, you are professional journalists. Don't you want to ask these questions? Don't you want to send these questions to the Ukrainian authorities, to your counterparts at the BBC? Silence in response. They say nothing. So now I'm promoting this fact-checking data verification association. We will send the data on this association, how it functions, the examples of its work. I hope you will show some interest to this organization as well.
If I say a few words about the question raised, let me reassure you that the African Union member countries have the capacity to form their own opinion about what's going on in the world on real time. I think nothing is now hidden. we make a difference between war propaganda and regular fake news circulated by mainstream media. And we also know that today the rise of social media, some of them who are not biased, give you the opportunity to have, first-hand, more reliable information to form your own opinion about the war in Ukraine, the war in Iran, the genocide in Gaza, etc., etc. So we have that capacity today to get those information firsthand, and the African countries are aware of what is going on in the world. And I just wanted to reassure you, we are very much, aware of that. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Blaine from POA, Pulse of Africa Media. My questions goes to His Excellency Chairperson Mahmoud Ali Youssouf. So what are the Africa strategic expectation from its partnership with Russia, especially with the development priority of Agenda 2063?
Russia is a big nation that had historic relations with the African continent, even before the Soviet Union and during the Russian Empire. This relationship has been evolving throughout history, events, and change of international geopolitics, but there is a core principle that the African Union Commission is building its relationship with the Russian Federation is the mutual benefit of this relationship. That's why we started in 2019 to have a framework of cooperation through different high-level meetings, the 2 summits. The third one is coming, and we will start a political dialogue that will certainly evolve into strategic partnership with Russia. And we think that Russia has comparative advantages in many fields and sectors, in particular in science and technology, biotechnology, in production of vaccines, health sector, and also in military equipment. Most of our member countries, buy the equipment from Russia. So we believe that investments for us, at least as the African Union Commission, we believe that investments, Russian investments in Africa will certainly help strengthen this relationship between the two parties. And investments in key sectors like energy, agriculture, and science and technology. This is the message that we will be carrying to this third session of the summit in October. And this is also, the policy we would like to see implemented in the framework of this partnership.
Да, Сергей Викторович, добрый день. Телеканал «Россия», Алексей Петров. Сегодня стартует саммит НАТО в Анкаре.
Today there is a NATO summit starting in Ankara. Mark Rutte previously said that the members of the alliance need to invest more into their production facilities, and recently he also said that the American equipment, Abrams tanks, will be also manufactured in Europe. So where is it going, and how could you comment on the fact that Zelensky was invited to go to Ankara, so he's planning to have a meeting with Trump, among other things there? Thank you. Well, Mark Rutte, he's worked out his own style. I believe this style is supposed to demonstrate his artistic talents in the genre of, of satire and irony that he is expressing a lot towards the Russian Federation, about which he is talking very condescendingly. I don't think that Zelensky's crew would hire him, but this kind of humor, this kind of satire, so they're also doing that. And Zelensky is now acting as a tragic character, and I think that tragedy is much more appropriate when we speak about the current situation and about the possible outcome of this situation. Enhancing the military output, the military manufacturing, I believe there are two reasons behind that. So they wouldn't want to pump the Zelensky regime until the very end, as many European representatives and elite representatives in the government and other official organizations, as they openly say, they want Ukrainians to do their Europeans' job to weaken Russia. And it is impossible to hide the bad shape of the European economies, including the German economy, when the social sector suffers gravely, when the welfares are getting reduced, when the various enterprises are running from Europe, traveling, moving to the US, where the conditions for the business are much more profitable. And now when they are pouring money into the weapons production, well, it maintains their economies afloat in one way or another. What will be the end of it? Well, there will be an end to it, well, sooner or later. But if they want to militarize to the maximum extent, well, then there will be one day where it will result in their defeat in this race for the superiority. Because Germany, we have already mentioned this, Germany is being nostalgic about the times when they gathered the entire Europe under the Nazi banners. Now they have a banner holder, Zelensky. I believe someone wants to take this banner from him. Someone wants to start a war against Russia directly, even though they say that they are not at war with Russia. But without the direct support with weapons, with the recon information, with the satellites imagery, with all the necessary data to choose targets, to enter necessary data into the programs of the deadly weapons that they use against Russian civilians and civilian infrastructure. All these things are done with the direct participation of the Europeans and, well, Americans too. President Putin clearly stated that, unlike other interlocutors of ours, we respect the agreements that we reach. And he reminded that in Anchorage and Alaska, July 15th last year, we received an offer, return offer, a compromise, so we thought about it and we agreed to it. All the other interpretations are out of place. In Alaska, we were told that Zelensky will adhere to the recommendations of the United States. Well, let's see what would be the outcome of their summit that they're going to hold in Ankara during the NATO summit.